Hi everyone, welcome back to our channel. Today I wanted to talk about my favorite books that I read in 2018. In the past, I've usually done a top 5, but last year there were just enough books that I couldn't quite squeeze them into a top 5. I wanted to mention a couple more that maybe I didn't give them 5 stars, but I really enjoyed them and they stuck with me, so I wanted to be able to talk about those. So this year I'm just doing a general favorites, and as a side note, yes, these are just books that I read in 2018. It doesn't necessarily mean that they were published in 2018. The first two books that I want to talk about go together, and they are The Dry and Force of Nature, both by Jane Harper. These are mystery thriller books that take place in Australia. These two books follow the same main character, Aaron Falk, who is an Australian federal agent, but they have very different stories, and you don't necessarily have to read them one right after the other, but I did find that it helped. The first one, The Dry, has been very popular here on BookTube. I've definitely seen it passed around in the past year or so. I really enjoyed this story. I liked the mystery of this one. It was really good. There were a few moments that were a little slow, but overall it was really awesome. And then Force of Nature, which takes place a few months after The Dry. That one, I didn't love the mystery as much, but the characters were so good in that book. I do have to mention that I think my enjoyment of these books was really helped by the fact that I listened to them on audiobook. The narrator was Australian, so it was really nice to hear these stories that take place in Australia told with an Australian accent. So those definitely had to make my top books of 2018 because I sped through these books. I was making up excuses of different things I could do just so I could keep on listening to it. I do have a separate review where I go into a bit more detail and share more of my thoughts, but these ones absolutely deserved to be on this list. The next book I want to mention is The Wonder by Emma Donahue. This was a buddy read that Les and I read towards the end of last year, and at the time I think I gave it 4 stars, but I've really thought about it a lot since then, and I also think that reading it with Les really helped. We do have a dual review, so I'll link that and you can hear both of our thoughts. This one follows a Florence Nightingale trained nurse who goes over to Ireland to see if this little girl, who apparently has not eaten in months, is actually not eating, or if it's some sort of miracle like all the people around her keep trying to sell it as. There are a lot of different layers to this story. It is pretty quiet. There's definitely some slow moments, but I found that even though I'm not a huge fan of slow books, this one really spoke to me, and maybe it was helped by the fact that Les and I were talking about it at the same time and we were able to really share our thoughts on it, but I really enjoyed this one. It stuck with me, and I also just love this cover so much. It's so pretty. The fourth book that I want to mention that I really enjoyed in 2018 is We Are as Gods, Back to the Land in the 1970s on the Quest for a New America by Kate Dela. This was one of those books where the subject matter really appeals to me, and I don't think it would necessarily appeal to a lot of other people. This one is a nonfiction book about a commune in Vermont and the people that are part of this commune and the people that live around the commune who are also part of this back to the land movement. Because I grew up in Vermont, I obviously have a special connection to that place, and I also just found the subject matter very interesting. You follow the lives of the different people living in the commune, their comings and goings, their hard times, their victories, and just what it's like to try and be self-sustaining. You also follow the people around the commune who don't want to live in that commune setting and share everything, but they still want to try and be as self-sufficient as possible. And then you also get to step back and get a broader view of what the Back to the Land movement looked like in America at that time, because it did exist previously and has existed for a long time, but it really saw a spike in the 1970s during the Vietnam War, with all of these young people feeling like their world was sort of collapsing and falling apart on them, which, you know, I feel like that sounds pretty similar now. I feel like every generation feels like their world is collapsing on some level. So this was their response to it. I thoroughly enjoyed reading this book. I gave it 4.5 stars. Once again, I wouldn't recommend this for everybody, but if you have an interest in learning about the Back to the Land movement, I would recommend this book for that. Or if you're looking for a nonfiction book that really delves into the lives of these people and why they're so interested in and being back to the land and living this life, this is also a good book for that as well. These final 3 books that I'm going to talk about, these were my 5-star books for the year. I don't usually rate a lot of books 5 stars, at least not anymore. I've definitely become a tougher critic the longer I've been on BookTube. So these 3, 5 stars, and they are in reverse order of how much I liked them. So the final book that I talk about is my favorite book that I read in 2018. The first book on this list is Educated by Tara Westover. This one has been huge on BookTube this year, and this was also the last book that I read in 2018. My sister had downloaded the audiobook from Audible at my request because the holds at the library were insane. So I convinced her to download the book, and we were actually listening to it at the same time. So we were kind of sharing our thoughts occasionally, and there were some moments in this book that shocked me in a good way and a bad way. Moments that just were unbelievable, like shocking that that could actually happen. For those of you that have somehow missed out on hearing about this book, Tara Westover was raised by very religious parents in Idaho. Her father believed in the end of days, so the family was constantly prepping for it, and Tara grew up with 6 other siblings. Tara's parents did not believe in modern medicine, in using the hospital, in going to school, so when Tara decided to go against her family's wishes and actually go to school, go to university, and eventually end up at Cambridge, that's a big deal, and this story follows that journey and tells a lot of little stories about her family along the way. There were a few moments that really stick out to me, but there are so many moments that you're just like, oh my god. Just the things that she didn't know, the things that happened to her, that happened to her siblings, to her parents, it's crazy. There are a lot of people that love this book. The hype is real and it is strong, and I agree that it pretty much lives up to the hype. It wasn't quite up there with the hype, but it was very close to it. Second place for my favorite book of 2018 was Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste Ng. I was not expecting to like this book as much as I did, which is always a pleasant surprise. This one is about a few different families in Shaker Heights, Ohio. There's a very well-to-do family, there's a hippie artist single mom family, and then there's also another family that is attempting to adopt a Chinese American baby, and how that decision really splits the community. This was another story that I listened to on audiobook, and once again I was trying to find different things to do so I could just keep listening to it and hearing about all of the different characters in this story. There are a number of different plot lines going on, and they were all equally interesting to me, and I just loved the spread of characters. I felt like I really knew some of them so well, and they were just really nice to read about. Just people that I wanted to read about. That's a nice feeling when you just want to read about these characters. I do have a more detailed review of this book, so if you want to hear a bit more, you can go check that out. And finally, my favorite book that I read in 2018 was Being Mortal by Atul Gawande. This one is a tough book. It touches on end-of-life care, on quality over quantity when it comes to keeping somebody alive, and what that means for the elderly and also people with terminal illnesses. This book was amazing. I loved this book so much. I did listen to it on audiobook, and that's definitely a trend this year with my favorite books being audiobooks, but it was so good. The narrator as well, I loved his voice. It was just perfect. I would not be surprised if I eventually read this book again at some point in the future, especially if I found like a secondhand copy at a library book sale or something, because it had so many ideas in it, so many things that were addressed and discussed that I found fascinating. But they were hard topics, but they were topics that you need to think about, and also to think about with your loved ones, and really understand where somebody is coming from when they may be elderly and they're ready to die. There were a couple times where I definitely felt emotional. I didn't cry, but definitely choked me up a bit. I'm not somebody that typically cries reading books. If you're somebody that cries very easily reading books, you're definitely gonna cry reading this one. It's been almost a year since I read this book, and I still think about it. It's really stuck with me, and it was such a good read. Those are my favorite books that I read last year. If you guys want to share some of your favorites down below, feel free to do so. I'd love to hear what books you also loved in 2018. As always, all of our links are in the down bar. You can go check those out if you feel so inclined. Thank you guys very much for watching, and I'll see you later.